scale-up coach for Winning Pitch. I've been involved in scaling up 3 businesses now. First one, we scaled up, a couple of us, to over £1 million, and we sold that one. Second one, we scaled up to about 12 million turnover over about 20 years, and that was good because we exited that one. And recently with Winning Pitch, I think I was the 3rd or 4th employee there, and we took that to, within about 13 years, we took that to zero to 12 million, 128 staff. We raised £2 million in finance to help create a training division, and we grow again. We lost a contract, so I've been through the horrible situation of scaling up and then being hit hard. So I've got some scars to prove it. And then we grow again, and we are the lead partner to deliver the Accelerated Growth Program on behalf of Business Wales. So that's me. Hopefully I've got a little bit of not only technical knowledge, but also real world knowledge about how to create a strategy workshop for a growing business. What I've got for you today are 3 tools and techniques, 3 techniques that I think are absolutely essential if you're thinking about creating and developing a strategy that's going to go live in April. Let's kick off then. So the first thing I would say is, somebody said to me once, well, we need to think about our business strategy in terms of growing and growth. And I said, yeah, that's great. But the business can't think for itself. And I think in terms of any growth business, businesses don't grow on their own. They grow through people like you making focused decisions on what you're going to do, and just as importantly, what you're not going to do. You make those big decisions probably at the right level. And it's really important to think that it isn't just going to happen. You've got to make the decision. And also, part of your job description is to develop this strategy. Part of your job description means that people are looking at you to create a strategy, a winning strategy, hopefully a growing strategy. So it's really important that we consider that. I also know that learning, it's okay doing sort of learning as in I talk at you and you try and understand it and then try and apply it. But I think some of the best learning comes from within. So what I thought I'd kick off with is maybe some questions to reflect on, really reflect on it in terms of yourself and in terms of your business. And that'll help set the context for some of the techniques and also, hopefully, the motivation to use them. So here's some quick questions. To what extent do you think it's important for you to develop a winning strategy for your business this year? How important is that you develop that strategy this year? To what extent could you clearly and succinctly explain your business's strategy for the coming year right now in a minute or 2 minutes? How clearly and succinctly could you explain it to me or to perhaps somebody in your team? To what extent have you really thought through on what areas you must focus your best efforts on? There's not enough time to do everything. And one of the things that I guess as a high growth business leader, you have to come to terms with is that you haven't got time to do everything. So therefore, we've got to really think about what are we going to focus on? The fourth question, to what extent are you confident you really have the skills and tools to create this winning strategy? How confident are you that you've got those skills and those techniques in place? So I thought it would be good just to kick off by setting these sort of questions, just so that we can challenge ourselves. In some cases, most successful business leaders I see are the ones that are prepared to ask themselves or be asked difficult questions. And I think these are the challenging questions that tee up our next 45 minutes, hopefully fairly successfully. So we've had to think about those questions. We've set the pace. What I'm going to do now is take you through some best practice techniques, 3 techniques that I think every business leader, every high growth manager, anybody who's trying to create a strategy needs in place. You might not need all 3 of them, but I would definitely say you need at least 1, possibly 2 of these. If you use these will help you develop a better strategy. Not only a better strategy, but a clearer strategy, one that you can articulate and be confident in. So our first technique is the business model canvas. Some of you may be familiar with this technique, but let's just have a quick little video, 2-minute video on what is the business model canvas. Because, well, first of all, before we even start the video, what is a business model? When you hear people talking about, oh, our strategy, we need to have the right business model for our strategy going forward. And when I challenge people and say, well, what do you think of as a business model? What's your business model? They say, well, it's our products. Well, yeah. It's our resources. It's our activities. Yeah. It's it's our costs. Yeah. Our revenue streams. Yeah. It's our partners. It's our customer. Crikey. When you get to that level, your brain starts to bleed. So what we needed was a 1-page way of articulating our business model, such that you can look at it and change it and challenge it and perhaps build more growth into it. And the way we do that on 1 page is the business model canvas. So let's just have a quick 2-minute video on what the business model canvas is and how it articulates the business model.
You can think of a business model like a story of how your enterprise will create, deliver, and capture value. And like a story, it can be one you've heard over and over before. For instance, you can start with what most people are fixated on, the value proposition. Travel for retirees. Then decide whom you can sell it to. Yep, boomers. Sketch in how you'll get it to them. Okay, a website. And how that will generate revenue. Sure, sales fees. You'll make it easy and automated. Next, you figure out what key resources you need to offer all that, like a reliable website and brand recognition. Carl's thinking his key activities will be marketing, website, and maintenance, and then partners will do the booking. And finally, where your costs will come from. Sales, marketing, platform development, all that will cost you. There you go, your first model. But don't expect a medal or a breakthrough. Predictable models can work, but rarely give you a competitive advantage, so don't fall in love with your first idea. To compete in a world where the best model wins, you'll need to think harder and explore alternatives. For example, prototype a model where you give away your value proposition for free. This will instantly change everything. You might not find this model realistic, but exploring it will force you to think hard about potential alternatives. As an entrepreneur, you're thinking of your model 24/7. Now you have a tool to structure your ideas as quick prototypes to consider with your team. Who knows, you might wind up with a disruptive model that changes an entire industry, like Skype with its freemium model, or Nespresso, which became a multi-billion-dollar business by locking customers into purchasing high-margin espresso capsules. In fact, understanding innovative or simply successful business models in other industries can be a great place to start getting to your breakthrough. There's no right or wrong way to do it, just 3 rules to start with. First, focus on the business model, not just your product, technology, or service. Second, don't fall in love with your first models. The best models are built on clever, unexpected elements, and that comes from creating many less obvious versions. Which leads to the 3rd rule. Iterate rapidly and test your models early, in the real world. How do you do that? Don't worry, guys. We're about to learn all about the real world.
So, the business model canvas, and this is what it looks like. The reason why I share this with you is because increasingly we're seeing on the Accelerated Growth Program that it's not the businesses with the best products or the best services or the most innovations that win. It's actually the businesses that have the best business model, that have discovered a business model that's sustainable, that's competitive, and that's profitable. So businesses aren't so much competing on their business plans anymore or their strategies, but around their business model is really critical to that. So you can see it's made up of customer segments on the right-hand side. We've got some description of customer relationships and the channels to market and the value proposition. Key activities, what do you do? Key resources, what do you have in terms of protecting and making sure that you have something that stops the competitors grabbing your share? We got key partners on the left-hand side, and we got costs and revenue streams on the bottom. So this is the blank sort of template that we work with. So what I thought we'd do is just to sort of turn it into something real, is to let's just take an example of a business and knock out a very quick business model canvas to show you how it's done. So I'm going to take this business here. This is a Hawaii chair business. Hopefully none of you are familiar with this particular business, because it's not a great one. Didn't do brilliantly. But let's just have a look at this product and this business, and then let's create very quickly a business model canvas.
Out of your workout, the Hawaii chair.
You know, Tamara, the Hawaii chair wasn't designed just for home. I mean, after all, for some of us, at least 40 hours of our week is spent sitting behind a desk at the office. So to see what office workers think of the Hawaii chair, we sent Erin Lee to work.
Hi, I'm Erin Lee with Perfect USA, and today we've brought the Hawaii chair to a very busy work environment. Let's get some first-time reactions.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
That feels great on my abs.
I can really feel this working.
Hawaii chair while answering phones, using the computer, balancing books, or filing paperwork. You can hardly call this work. With the Hawaii chair, it takes the work out of your workday.
If you can sit, you can get fit. The Hawaii chair.
Thanks, Erin Lee.
Thanks, Erin Lee. Yeah, great. So if we can build a business model, a winning business model out of that product, then we can do anything, right? So the business actually did fail, actually. But I could argue that maybe it wasn't the product. Maybe if it had the right business model around it, it might have succeeded. But let's have a go. So where we normally start with our business model canvas, I generally start on the right-hand side with customer segments. And this is being quite specific about who is our customer group we're going after. And obviously, the more specific we can be, the better. Woolly market segments lead to woolly strategies. So I'm going to be quite specific here and think, well, what sort of customers could we sell this chair to? Maybe office workers, but that's too broad. So I'm thinking, what sort of office workers sit down a lot, don't move a lot, and might be up for keeping fit while they work? Who has that problem more than others? So let's going to say, well, maybe call centers, people who work in a call center. And what I'm going to do is say, actually, we're not going to sell to people who work in call centers. Maybe we're going to sell to the owners or the managers of the call centers, because they're the ones with the budget, right? So our customer segment for Hawaii chair, the people we're going for are going to be owners, managers of call centers. Quite specific. And next I'm going to go in the middle, right in the middle with our value proposition. So this isn't necessarily what we're selling. This is actually what is the problem or the value that this addresses. So if I'm selling to owner managers of call centers, I don't want to sell to them the fact that this is a swivel chair so much. I want to address their need, address their pain point. And actually, for owner managers who want to make lots of money, actually what I'm selling them is not a chair. I'm going to sell them increased productivity through better staff well-being, better attendance at work, happier staff. And that what that means is increases in profitability. So I'm not selling these people a chair. No. I'm selling them profitability that swivels around a little bit. So we've got value proposition. We're going to go next to channels. And this is how we get our product to market. And what we're going to say here fairly simply is we're going to use office furniture distributors to get our Hawaii chairs to our managers. Fourth area is customer relationships. So this talk really defines and describes what sort of relationship have we got with our customers. This could be an online relationship. It could literally be a sort of fire and forget, sell them something and never go back. Or it could be more account managed, or it could be consultative. Or what sort of relationship have you got with your customers, would you say? So I'm going to say account managed here. We're going to sell them chairs, yeah, but then we're going to go back maybe every quarter or every 6 months and see if we can tailor the chairs in any way, make them better, make them more tailored towards people, all sorts of things. Key activities is what exactly your business does. So if you're a manufacturing company, you could do all sorts of range of things rather than just putting manufacturing there. You know, manufacturing companies, they do, some manufacturing companies do research and development. some do design, some do, I guess, some do packaging, some do construction of the product, some do distribution, some do sales and marketing, some do leasing, repairing, maintenance, recycling, all sorts of things you could do. What we're going to say on Hawaii Chair, as an example, is they're going to do assembly of the product, they're going to sell it, and they're going to deliver it. Those are our key activities. Key resources is really talking about how we're going to protect. What can we do almost to build a moat around this business? How do we protect it? Through our key resources. Now, in this case, we could say, well, we've got some IP on the, maybe on the swivel mechanism, shall we say. So we've got some IP protection. So that's ours here. But for you, it could be maybe a particular key resource that gives you a unique selling point or a uniqueness. Could be maybe a person who's got particular knowledge in that market. It could be a technology. It could be maybe in some cases a database. It could be a particular key customer that you've got or something like that, maybe the brand. So key resources is something you've got that protects you. Over to the left-hand side, key partners. So these are the key external businesses or agencies or bodies that you can use to leverage your growth. So as a startup, if we're starting up with a Hawaii Chair, we might need support from Hawaii Chair USA, perhaps. We might need support and work with the Furniture Industry Association or maybe a marketing agency. So they need to be just put in the left-hand side there, key partners. So that's 7 of our 9 boxes done. The last 2 are cost structure and revenue streams. So cost structure, all I'm after there is your 2 or 3 biggest costs. The 2 or 3 biggest costs in your business. I could ask for more, but to be honest, in most businesses, if I've got your 3 or 4 top costs, I've probably got 70% of your cost base. So those are the things I need to change in order to move the dial. So in this case, it's assembly and sales costs and the license agreement, we'll say, as our 2 biggest areas of cost for this business. And that leaves us with the last one. So we've got cost, we go to revenue streams. So revenue streams, as we know with growth businesses really benefit from multiple revenue streams. So obviously here we've got sales of our wonderful chairs, but also we could supplement that with another revenue stream, which could be sell-ons like covers or chargers or spares or hula chair, I don't know, swivel classes, downloads, whatever it might be. We could do all sorts of things to help, even maintenance or leasing or whatever. Lots of ways of putting money in the till, as it were, for those revenue streams. And there on one page, we've got our business. And I can explain to you, when you've seen this, how this business is going to work, the whole business model, not just the customers and not just the products, but how it could work and how it add value. So this is the Hawaii Chair one. Whether this would succeed, I don't know, but I thought I'd just walk you through a quick example to help show what it can do. There's a couple of very quick things I just wanted to show you on that. One thing, creating it, but quite rightly, some people on the call might go, well, that's great, but, you know, so what? Business model canvas. So I thought I'd show how we would use it. So there's 6 power-ups, if you like, for your business model canvas when you're thinking of scaling. So very quickly, I just canter through these. One is switching costs. So how do we make it easy or hard to switch from our business to someone else's? So the good example there, of course, is the coffee pods, Nespresso. The actual machine was relatively cheap, but you could only use a certain type of pod, which were quite expensive. And the same if you think about razor blades. So how do you stop people from switching? The second area is recurring revenues. So somebody told me the other day that the ink for some inkjet printers is more valuable than gold, pound for pound. So what's interesting there, of course, is that if you buy a printer, you have to buy the ink. If you have to buy the ink, then actually you don't necessarily need to put as much effort into selling the ink. It just follows on as an extra sale. You don't need as much effort to sell the ink as you do the printer in the first place. So how can you drive revenue streams? From a cash point of view, how can you earn before you spend? So is there a model there whereby, like Dell used to do, whereby you'd spec up your PC or your laptop or whatever it was you were going to buy from Dell? You'd say, I want this sort of monitor, this sort of keyboard, this sort of chipset, etc., etc. You scale it up there and you buy it online and you pay for it online there and then. And then within about a week, you get your PC. But what's interesting there is it was cash up front. Cash up front. So from I guess a stock control, inventory, costs point of view, very useful for them. Number 4, game-changing cost pricing structure. So yeah, you saw on the video there, Skype's free idea. I'm not necessarily saying you give away what you do for free, but is there a different pricing system, a different pricing structure? Payment by results. So to a certain extent, the accelerated growth program that you're participating is a partially payment by result program. 5th area is getting others to do the work. So can third-party people create the value for you? So this is user-generated, the customer-generated stuff here. So Facebook doesn't have to create a new Facebook for Poland, China, Russia, etc. It provides the scaffolding and the users actually fill it full of content. So can you get your customers in some ways to do some of the heavy lifting for you? And finally, scarcity. I guess the big question I normally ask when I'm looking at a business model canvas is, what if we wanted to grow 10 times faster than we are doing now? I think any business can grow. It can grow as fast as it wants until it runs out of something. And that could be cash, it could be skilled employees, it could be customers, could be a number of things. So identify what gets scarce on that business model canvas, and really maybe that should be the thing you need to focus on your strategy. So a couple of other quick examples of business model canvases. Here's one that this was on for a gin manufacturer, and you can see here it's all mapped out. When COVID hit, though, interestingly, the lady who was the manager of this organization was literally in tears on the phone to me, asking me, saying that this COVID-19 thing, as she put it, has broken my business and it's breaking me. She's really upset. And what I said to her was, I don't think it's broken your business. I think it's broken parts of the business model, like the channels, maybe like the value proposition. But if we do a business model canvas, we can look at those particular areas and repair the business. And let's see if we can get a business model that works in COVID. So here was one, we moved from a traditional gin manufacturing model. Here we moved to an online members gin club model, which actually it developed a whole new arm to the business and actually put them in a better position for when they get back to normal. So we can change the business model, look at different options and play with it until we get the right version. Here's one that was actually a free of charge, not-for-profit version, which was to do with COVID-19 hand sanitizer gel for the same gin manufacturer. So we can look at different options and tweak it and drive it so we get the best business model for this year to drive our company forward. So business model canvas. Our second, or in this case, third technique is a 3-year visioning orbit. So when I get asked to go into businesses and they say, well, we want a growth strategy, Steve, and I say, that's absolutely great. And I say, what does growth mean? What does growth mean to you? I mean, ask yourself, for your business, what is growth going to mean for you, for your business, maybe over the next, not just next year, but 3 years' time? And, it's one that often creates a bit of a, well, it's quite difficult. It's, well, it could be this, could be that. It's like, yeah, but we need to get that vision really clear. Then we can work towards it. For me, it's a little bit like the which rod catches the fish puzzle. So if you've got the same handicap as me as a marketing degree, then you start with A and you go, no. Then you go B, no. C, no. D, no. Oh, it's D. Oh, that's great. And the engineers in the audience say, start with the fish. Start with the fish and work backwards. And that's exactly what we need to do with our vision. Start with our destination in mind and work backwards, chunk it backwards. So this is the technique that we use. This is a template we use for our 3-year visioning orbit. On one page, a full 3 years of articulated growth of the business and how it's going to do it. Looks a little bit like a dartboard. And you can see in the current center circle, there is the current year. The year on the outside of the circle is 2023. So that's like 3 years out. And the circle inside that one is 2 years out. And the circle inside that one is 1 year out. So any details are all within a particular year, either this year, next year, the year after, or the year after that. But obviously for us, working back from the fish, what's really important is that 3rd year and our current year, because that gives us a clear gap that we need to fill. So we can actually, in addition to this dartboard, we can actually also put some quadrants onto this. So any information in the top left will be sort of to do with financials. Anything top right will be customers. Anything bottom right will be operations. And anything bottom left will be to do with people. So what we can do is to sort of start off and say, okay, so we've got this wonderful technique now. Where do we go from here? So I was chatting to a lady who was involved in a technology company. And I said, okay, so you want to grow? And she said, yeah, want to grow, definitely want to grow. So I said, what to? And she said, well, I don't know. So I said, well, where should we start? Describing your business in 3 years' time. She said, well, I don't know. So I said, well, try. give me something to work with here. So she said, well, I don't know, a turnover. So I said, okay, turnover. So I said, what is your turnover now? And what is it in 3 years? And let's chunk that back. So because it was a sort of a young startup business, it was only 10K at the moment turnover, but she wanted to be 2 million in 3 years' time. So we put 2 million in the outer circle. And we said, okay, so if you're 2 million in 3 years, what do you need to be by year 2, given your 10K now? So she said, well, I don't know. I said, well, have a guess. Well, about 1 million, okay. And then year 1, 1 million in year 2, 10K now, what do you think? And she said, well, I don't know, 200K. So, okay, that's great. Good chunking. Chunked back from year 3 to where we are now. So I said, what else? Oh, I don't know. So, well, what other than turnover, what else is important financially to you? So she said, well, profits. So we did the same again. What is it now? 0. Okay. What do you want to be on 2 million? 400K. Okay. So chunk that back for me. 400K in 3 years needs to be 200K in year 2, 40K in year 1, etc. And then we can do the same with number of customers. It was a big shock to her that if she was turning over £2 million based on a single average price of £30, that was 66,000 customers. Bit of a shock. But you can chunk that back as well, so we can get an idea of that. We can also talk about the blend of product, what sort of product it was, lingerie versus tech offering in this case, what sort of exports we wanted in which year, new product lines. So maybe the fancy new diagnostics piece came in year 3, and then it was year 2, it was this, and year 1, it was that. How many pieces we manufactured, where it was to be manufactured. So if we're going to do 66,000, then maybe by year 3, we needed to be out in China. So if we're out in China in year 3, then what's year 2 look like? Well, that would be the Newport factory. Okay, fair enough. Moved us round to the 4th quadrant, which was people. So at the moment we had 2 people getting 10K and 0 profitability, and not manufacturing an awful lot. But in 3 years' time, we needed to get more people, even though we were outsourcing maybe. So we went 50 employees year 3, 35 year 2, 15 year. Possibly one of the most important and interesting ones for me with this particular client was the key appointments. As I say, businesses don't grow on their own. They grow through people like you making big decisions about key things. And if you don't have the specialisms in those sort of departments, then, if you try to do it all yourself, you're never going to grow. So for her, it was absolutely key that we had a marketing director in the next year, a finance director, and then, looking at the operations side, an operations director for all those manufacturing things we were doing. And then maybe partnerships. And then finally, we also said, well, how are we going to fund this? So what we put in there was external investment that came in year 1 of 500K. That was going to be sort of an asset management piece for the machinery. So there you can see it, all on one page. I've gone through that pretty quickly. And obviously that sort of session, generally when I do it with clients, it can take a couple of hours. I think my worst or longest is probably five days with one very large corporate organization who will remain nameless. But that's it. On one page, you've got your vision. And that's kind of such a powerful thing because, it's your vision and it actually articulates where you're taking the business and what you need to do with it. You can also play the where will it go wrong game with this, or the what's stopping us from growing 10 times as fast. We can point to particular areas and say that's where the constraint is in this. Maybe it's the cash, maybe it's the number of customers, maybe it's the people in the management team. Maybe that's the constraint. But on one page, you can actually, now your orbit, the bespoke sort of the bespoke labels around the edges will be different for your company, totally. But turnover, profitability, number of employees, these sort of things are fairly generic, to be brutally honest. So I think they would fit quite nicely into your 3-year plan. But clearly some of the customer things, some of the operational things, particularly for a service-based business, they'll vary a little bit as well. But very, very powerful tool. And don't just take my word for it. Here's a 2-minute video on the 3-year visioning orbit.
We bake a range of fabulous cakes. We specialise in flapjacks, muffins and cupcakes, and we supply not just all the supermarkets, but convenience stores and impulse outlets and caterers all around the UK. So we went through the process at the workshop of creating the orbit.
We used the orbit tool. We started thinking about, well, if where we want to be in 2016 or 2017 is here, where are we going to have to be in the years between now and then?
Specifically getting everyone involved in really fleshing out the big picture and the plan, and then it becomes not just my plan, but it really becomes everyone's plan, and I think that's been a real powerful tool and a real motivating tool as well.
Roaming Roosters sells sustainable food online, and we now have a farm shop, bistro and education centre. As you're forecasting, you're wanting to achieve and you aspire to achieve, but you just don't know how you're going to do it. But this did help us a lot to sort of start from the outside, work back in, work out where you want to get to and how you're going to get there. And it's given us the tools now to get there a lot quicker.
We've managed to create the orbit, the single page plan, tell a story to the bank. They've recognised the credibility of the company, the strengths of the owners, and they very quickly got a commercial mortgage.
We exceeded our forecasts and quite rapidly really. We hit what we wanted to achieve in 12 months, in 6 months.
We've been here at Newcastle Airport for about 8 years now. We sell men's and women's fashion and travel accessories, all with a slant towards holidaymakers or people travelling. The orbit tool on the wall, we've been looking at that and sort of finalising all the different areas that we need to start working on next.
The orbit tool is actually probably one of the most powerful tools within the whole tool set. The question to the guys is, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? We can then start to take small steps to achieve those goals, and it makes the whole process simpler and feel more achievable because you're in 6-month blocks or 12-month blocks rather than looking out to 5 years, which can feel a little bit overwhelming at some point.
The orbit diagram has been a wonderful tool. That's been really helpful. In fact, that's probably been the most pivotal thing that we've been shown. Yeah, it's just been really good for us.
So that was the orbit diagram. That was our second of our techniques. We did business model canvas first, and now we've taken a 3-year view, a 3-year vision of using our visioning orbit tool. So if that's 3 years out, 2 years out, 1 year out, then I suppose, to be honest, since we're talking about having something ready to go in April, for the next 12 months, what does a plan look like for the next 12 months? This is what we call our SOAP, strategy on a page, or some people call it a What's and How's plan. And it's very similar in theory to some of the things like OKRs, objectives and key results, that people like Google use and Intel used very, very successfully to grow their business. But again, a one-page technique that clearly articulates what is your strategy for this year at the right level of granularity. So first thing we need to think about is we use our visioning orbit to go 3 years out, 2 years out, 1 year out. That gives us what we need to do this year. Then the question is, what are the vital few things we need to do this year? Not the trivial many. As I say, there's not enough time to do everything. And we know that the most successful people, the most brilliant entrepreneurial minds in the world, the one thing they've got in common with you and me is the same number of minutes and hours in a day. They have the same amount of time. And if you accept that, then logically, the only conclusion you can come to is that they've actually managed to focus their time on doing the most important things well, rather than trying to do everything. So first bit of advice on this, thinking about your strategy for this year, is when you think about your objectives, what you want to achieve, you need to narrow your focus. I would say maximum of 3, but certainly no more than 3 I would go for. What could those involve? Well, having done hundreds of these, I would say what you need to think about is getting it at the right level. So your 3 objectives, your 3 vital few objectives, shall I say, are probably something to do with, could be something to do with customers and market breakthroughs, could be something to do with process improvements, could be something to do with people or structure, or could be something to do with funding or finance maybe. And in terms of customers and markets, it could be maybe a big increase in sales from a new market segment that you're trying to enter to help fuel your growth. It could be maybe a big increase in sales from existing customers. The easiest place to get more business is existing customers. Most people are focused on new all the time, but just simply increasing your prices to existing customers can have a massive impact straight away. Sales breakthrough from a new product maybe, or maybe even exporting. It could be something to do with those sort of areas. Or possibly it could be something to do with process improvements. So it could be a real big improvement in a key operational process or a sales process. Maybe a new supplier or a partner, maybe a cost reduction, maybe a new technology implementation that goes across. Could be one of those. People, structure, maybe recruiting key members of staff that are going to make a winning difference. Maybe the introduction of performance management or restructuring or staff development, something like that, that's going to have a big impact on your business. And then finally, maybe something to do with funding and finance. So it could be about securing debt funding, equity, improving your cash, boosting profitability, something like that. So chances are it could be something to do with one of these areas that I've put on there. And what we need to do is to think about those. And maybe in this case, this business picked, well, actually, one objective is to do with increasing sales from a new market segment. Another one was to do with, if they're going to do that, they needed a new partner. And if they did that, they also needed to recruit some new team members because it was in a new region. So those were the 3 that they picked. And what we can do is actually try and articulate those in a SMART format, or from what, to what, by when. So we're very, very clear on what exactly we're trying to do. Lack of clarity is often one of the reasons why a lot of plans don't actually get successfully implemented. It just says increase sales or improve communication. Too woolly. I can't do a strategy behind that. It's just, it would depend. So we've got to have the from what, to what, by when, get it measurable. So generate turnover to new customers in the health sector from 0 to 500k by Feb 20. Double the sales of product X from 1 million to 2 million by March. Raise funding, develop a new product, ramp up production, boost quality, increase sales team. Note how simple I am phrasing these objectives. Verb noun, from what, to what, by when. Verb noun, from what, to what. Increase this, reduce that, increase, decrease that, boost this. I'm using very simple words because I want to make the strategy as easy to explain and as easy to understand for everybody. So this business might pick those 3 for the sake of argument, and they become their what's. And we can put the what's on the left-hand side, because then what we need obviously is a next level of granularity, which is, well, that's all very well knowing what you want to do, but how are you going to do that? So what we can do then is actually, at the next level, is actually look at what we need to do in order to drive the execution of those what's. In other words, our hows. So for each of our what's, we can generate the hows. So for example, increase production, what number 2, from 500 to 900 by May 20. We're going to need to locate and move to a new factory. We're going to need to successfully negotiate better, more effective contracts. And we're going to need to recruit a new production manager. Simple, clear, aligned. What we can do then is actually put it into a template. So you can see here on the left-hand side, I've got my what's, what we need to do. And then we can put our hows in. So these hows that have gone in here are to do with the ones in the sort of like the reddy, I guess, I don't know, dark pink color. So those are the hows that are relevant to that particular what. In blue, you can see those are the hows that are relevant to the what in blue, and the same with gray. And what I'm going to do is give each of those a target. And then for each of those, I'm going to look at to what extent do they drive the what they were chosen for. So each of those hows at the intersection, I'm going to say, to what extent does this how drive the what? So to make it easy, what I've done here is to say, well, those 4 were chosen for that what. So they obviously get a star because they're a key driver. They really do drive it. And so do they. And so do they. They were chosen for that particular one. But what's interesting is when you start to look at what impact hows have on different what's, if I can put it that way. So we can see here that if a how is a driver of a different what, it gets a star in the same way that it had a star because that was the one it was driving. If it impacts it or drives it a little bit, it gets a circle. And if there's no relationship whatsoever, it gets we don't put anything in there, it just gets a gap. Why is that important when we do that exercise? Because we can actually look at which resources are most at risk for this plan. So you can see on this plan, Sue, the second how, was chosen to drive what number 1, win and deliver 500k of new contracts. Secure long-term partner is also, it turns out, a key driver of improving project quality rating, and is also a key driver of recruiting and building new Yorkshire team. They weren't chosen necessarily for those, but they are still key drivers. You can see that some of the other ones have an indirect impact. But the key thing here is that if, for example, Sue gets knocked over by a bus or wins the lottery and leaves the business, this whole plan goes south, doesn't it? Because the project she's got, and actually it turns out she's got other projects, it's heavily reliant on her. So we need to look at this plan and say, how do we mitigate the risk of Sue? Because she's got too much on her plate at the moment. And frankly, even the second how, if that goes wrong, then that completely kiboshes the whole plan in its way. So it's a good way of looking at resources, good way of actually measuring it that way. What we can also do every month is put a red, amber, green along the bottom. So if it's green, that means in that particular month, the plan is on target. So we say, well done to those people. If it's amber, it's probably 70% to 100% on target. So there or thereabouts, but not quite. If it's red, that means it's totally off target. And what I would suggest at that particular meeting is we spend the majority of the meeting working on that red project, in this case with Jim, that's to do with launch digital marketing campaign. And we help him to get that plan back on target so that our whole plan gets back on target. So that's the single page plan, or the SOAP, strategy on a page. And that helps us takes us the vision into sort of what we need to do this year, a format for this year. So those are the sort of 3 techniques that we've spoken about. What I think you'll need at least one of those, or maybe all 3. the business model canvas to really think about your business model and to challenge yourself. How do we get more growth into this business model? And which areas do we need to focus on of those 9 boxes? You think about the visioning orbit, 3 years on one page. You've mapped out the next 3 years of your growth. So you've got a clear picture. I would say that, you know, without a vision, you can't be a leader. You can be a manager without a vision, that's fine, but you can't be a leader because you're not taking everybody on a journey, or you don't know where the journey is. So I think having a vision is really important. The third area we covered was the single page plan, or the strategy on a page, or the what's and how's plan at that annual level of granularity to help you drive it forward. So think about those 3 techniques that we've spoken about. And, you know, what I ask you to do is to think about it, you know, to what extent those techniques would help you. If you think it's important, you have a winning strategy for this year and you've got to do it, then to what extent, if you had these techniques, do you think you could clearly and succinctly explain your strategy? To what extent would it help you really focus on the key areas, the vital few, rather than trying to do everything? And to what extent do you think it would help you more confidently create that strategy and that strategic plan to help lead your business forward? Okay, so that's the end of our webinar for today. There are future webinars I'm delivering on, which is the coaching masterclass on the 14th of March. If you're interested in listening to me talk about coaching, 14th of March, and also execution, how to execute, on the 23rd of March. So thank you for your attention today. I'll open it up if we've got a couple of minutes for questions and answers. I'll stop sharing now. I realise I've gone at a reasonable pace there, so apologies for that. But I wanted to get all the value I could do out of that 45 minutes for you. So, anybody got any questions before we close down? No.
Do we can we get blank models of these? Are they available anywhere?
Yeah, I can get you those. Also, there's the possibility. If you're interested, there is the possibility of, you know, we could do a work package or something like that, possibly, in terms of support. Sometimes it's fine doing it in this environment, but really, you know, it really comes to life when someone like me does it with your team and you actually all get together and start to really talk it out. So there may be opportunities to do that if you're interested.
I think that, yeah, I think I would be interested. Yes. So I probably need contact details, your contact details.
Okay, I can drop them. I'll drop them in the. Well, actually, let me take your. I'll take your details and then I'll be in touch in terms of. I'll have to talk to your relationship manager, I think, in terms of how we do that. So yeah. I better overpromise, otherwise I'll be in trouble. That sounds great. I'll sort that out.
Yeah.
Anybody else got any good questions on the techniques or how we take the next steps?
Steve, what about ways of cascading this to your team? So we're kind of part of the way through this journey where we've put our strategy together for this year, and we're at a point now where we're kind of, right, how do we now cascade everything we've put together in the last few weeks and months down to the team?
Really great question, Nicola. So what I would say to that is, so I think it's your role at the start to create the high level strategy. I think then the way that we deploy it down is try and, if I created a 1-page plan, let's say I was in your organization, I was the leader, I create the strategy, I've got my what's and I've got my how's. If I've got, say, 8 how's along the top, I might give you 2 of those how's to do, and they come down to become your what's. And you work with your team then to come up with the hows. And let's say, for the sake of argument, that if John was in your team, you might give 2 hows to John, and they come down to become his whats and his hows. So actually what we do is effectively develop what we call the golden thread right the way through the organization. Everybody's focused on doing the same small number of key things. Now, it could be that the single page plan format maybe is too complex for some organizations at lower levels. So what I would suggest there, we could just even use a Gantt chart, to be brutally honest, as long as it's focused on what it meant to do, and it's got some housing there, then we don't have to be too precious at a lower level that we have to use a single page plan format. But it's really making sure that we've got that alignment of the strategy from what and how down throughout the structure.
Okay. And what about the buy-in to the vision of the whole team? That's quite important, and that's the stumbling block we've got. We've got a big team now. We've grown from 40 odd a couple of years back to 110 plus, and getting that message across to home workers, which is very different now, isn't it? The home workers plus people are within the office, plus we've got an overseas team as well now. It's just, I know it's a bit different, but kind of how do we just get that complete buy-in of the team, I guess, from my...
Sure. So it's about selling the vision, is it? Yeah. Thinking about, okay, yeah. So I think the single page, the visioning orbit is the ideal tool to use, as long as you use animation. You don't put it up all at once, maybe, but actually explaining the vision and selling the vision using the business using the visioning orbit is, for me, the best way. I mean, I was when I joined our organisation, when we were a very small organisation. I was recruited on the basis of an orbit diagram like this. So the business was only, as I say, about 3 or 4 employees back then. It only just sort of kicked off, and the founder said to me, Steve, because of your skills and knowledge in Wales, in this case, let me show you where you fit in our model. And he talked about the vision, and he said, this is the vision. He gave me the vision orbit diagram and said, let me talk you through this and what role you play in this and why it's going to be fantastically successful and why it's going to be an exciting ride. And I think the vision in orbit is a good way of explaining the business strategy. But when you're selling it to people, obviously you've got to explain what their role is in it and what it means to them, so they can see that, you're really leading the business to success. It's not just a case of, like it is in some businesses where the strategy, frankly, is just a bit of hope, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I like that. So the vision orbit's good. We did it a bit differently, but that gives it much better clarity, I think. Yeah, and for anybody on the call, just the book that I read, which was a game changer for us, was a book called Traction. If anybody's interested in that book, it was really useful for us. Just to, if that helps anyone as an entrepreneurial operating system that, the MD and the owner of our business just read and said, look, please have a look at this. And we downloaded it from Amazon, and I spent many a morning driving into work just listening to that. And honestly, it's brilliant. So if that helps anybody who's on the call, then it certainly helped us. And we've gone through a world of pain for the last probably 6 months, just trying to put this together. But yeah, so if that helps anyone.
Thanks, Nicola. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's great sharing. Anybody else in the last couple of minutes, any questions about how to make it work and how to drive it forward? If not, then I will close up. As I say, if you're interested in hearing, if you like what you've heard today, I've got another couple of those webinars coming up on coaching and execution, which is kind of related to this particular topic as well. So if you're interested in that, sign on for that one, and I'll see you there. If not, have a good rest of day, and I hopefully will see you in the stars with the successful businesses that we all are and driving it forward. So best of luck with your strategy, and hopefully see you soon.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks all. Take care.